Coming up, Tennessee wins, but is there reason for concern with the Vols? And more fallout to Florida's loss to Michigan. It's all on the way next on AT&T SEC Country Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to AT&T's SEC Country Live. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former Alabama All-American Mike Johnson. We'll talk about Alabama on today's show, as well as Georgia and Tennessee and Florida and everything else in between. Week 1 is in the books. We start to look ahead a little bit to Week 2, but there's still a little business to be taken care of with the final SEC game that was played last night.
I mean, what a opening weekend it was. Just everything from start to finish in the SEC seemed like it was a legendary game, including last night, man. What a win for Tennessee.
So here in AT&T's SEC Country Live, by the way, AT&T a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live, AT&T, entertainment your way. Let's dive in here the way we start each and every show with our first and 10. And item number 1 on our list is the Tennessee win last night. In double overtime against Georgia Tech for a long time, I think this one looked like it might be an easy Georgia Tech win, really kind of mirroring what we saw Sunday night where the SEC team, Texas A&M, had the big lead before finally losing it to UCLA. This time it was the SEC team kind of trailing and seemingly out of it, and yet by virtue of some Tech turnovers, they get back in, find a way to win it in double overtime, 42-41. So Vols get the win. But what did Butch Jones and Tennessee prove here? Let me ask you that to start the conversation off.
Plain and simple, first and foremost, they proved resiliency. They proved that they can get it done on that offensive side of the ball. This is a team that only had about 22 snaps there for most of the first half, and really not a lot of opportunity. Their defense was getting pushed down the field, put to the test. It wasn't until a couple turnovers that really Tennessee was able to respond offensively. I think that the moment wasn't too big for Quentin Dormany. I thought that he looked special back there. And John Kelly proved that he is a elite level back in the SEC in my eyes. I think that he looked incredible last night.
Yeah, John Kelly does seem like a very capable replacement for Alvin Kamara and Jalen Hurd. We wondered how Tennessee would do this season without both those running backs. At least Kelly from last night, you seem to think they could be fine offensively. I was also fine with the performance from Quentin Dormany in that game. But how about that Tennessee defense here for a moment? Bob Shoop, the coordinator, who was thought to be one of the big-time free agent acquisitions when he was made by Tennessee going into the 2016 season. But last night, probably not the highlight film that Shoop really wants to really kind of display his ability as a coach.
I didn't like the game plan for Tennessee. If anybody watched really closely, they saw how far off the ball Tennessee's defensive line was. I don't know what the thought is on the defensive line. You have the ability to read and react on some of those offensive linemen, shed some of the cut blocks, but I really thought they exposed their second-level defenders to some of the fullbacks and B-backs in Georgia Tech's offense. Really were able to get downhill, turning the corner, and listen, that's what happens. 86 carries for 535 yards last night for Georgia Tech's offense. All sorts of records being set by their quarterback. They were really able to expose that run defense from Tennessee last night. I know that Tennessee's defense is happy to have that game in the rearview mirror where they win in the column there on the left.
Travis Ellsbury in the comments section having a little fun with the way the game started for Tennessee. If you saw ESPN broadcast, they had a camera inside the Tennessee locker room, and there's this big show of Butch Jones in the front of the room saying, "Who's got my back?" And everybody's saying, "I got your back," and he's saying he's got their back. And that's more of that kind of talk that you get from Butch Jones a little bit. And what's funny about that is that the body language of the Tennessee players during the game, I thought completely betrayed whatever Butch Jones tried to get done with the, hey, we've got each other's back. I mean, take a look at the two quarterbacks here for a moment. You mentioned Quentin Dormany, who played pretty well as the starter. Jerry Garantano was on the bench and really seemed to be sort of sulking and pouting on the bench for most of the game.
Yeah.
This notion this is a Tennessee team that's all in it together and they've got each other's back. Boy, that's not really the body language that Tennessee showed on the field at times.
Yeah, I realize it's a little bit different situation, but I noticed during the Georgia game the other day, Jake Fromm goes in the game, gets a touchdown on his first drive in there. Kirby Smart goes over, grabs him by the jersey, walks him over to the offensive huddle. Here are these two guys, Quentin Dormany and Jerry Garantano. Here they are supposed to be splitting snaps. He's supposed to be getting snaps in the first game. I would not have that as a head coach. Garantano was kind of sitting off to the side. He's not even listening to the play call. Doesn't even look interested in what's going on in the football game. Kirk Herbstreit made light of it on the broadcast last night. To me, that goes back to Butch Jones. It goes back to these offensive coaches. You've got to make sure this offense is really looking in depth into what's going on in the field. He's only one play away. Aside from the fact that they're not splitting snaps anymore, probably, he's still only one play away from getting in the game.
But listen, we said during the offseason Tennessee's not a top 25 team. The Vols ranked there right now. That's not where we think they finish, and nothing from last night's game made me change my opinion on that. I mean, Tennessee was a point spread favorite. They should have won the game. FPI gave them like a 67% chance of winning it. If anything, the Vols were disappointing in getting the win, more so than earning a lot of credit because they pulled it out there late. As Jeremy Pettis mentioned in the comment section, I know that Butch Jones all about the will to win. He sort of rammed that phrase down our throat a bunch last night. I'm sure he'll spin this as his players proving will to win here. The truth is, if you're an SEC team that thinks you win a championship, how about you handle Georgia Tech?
Well, no, listen, I'm going to give them some credit where credit's due, because how many questions did we have going into this game? We didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. We didn't know what they would be offensively. We didn't know how the offensive line was react. Trey Smith last night, in his debut on SEC playing fields, he looked incredible last night playing right guard. I think that the moment wasn't too big for Quentin Dormady, and I think John Kelly and also Marquez Callaway there on offense both looked incredible. So it wasn't as great as they wanted it to be, but still building blocks towards the future and just finding yourself as a football team. I think it started last night. I'm going to give them a little bit of credit on that front.
Diedrich Frazier in the comment section, please talk about Butch Jones' trash can. Hey, listen, it's a long show. Before we're done, I promise you, the Butch Jones trash can, the Tennessee trash can, that subject will come up here on AT&T's SEC Country Live. Chris Impact also talking about Florida says, hey, he doesn't put the blame for the Michigan loss on Doug Nussmeier. He puts it on the Florida players. And with that, let's transition to item number 2 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10 list, because Jim McElwain was also forced on Monday to speak out about Doug Nussmeier as well. You know the story here. Florida offense was not good against Michigan, and really that's been the case for the 2 years that Nussmeier's been the OC there in Gainesville. This has been a sputtering offense. A lot of Florida fans starting to point some fingers of blame towards Nussmeier. Maybe some of that towards McElwain a little bit too. Here was McElwain on Monday giving his best effort and attempt to defend Nussmeier in the Florida offense a little bit. Here's the coach.
I've seen what he can do. I've seen what he's done. And, he's a guy that takes a lot of it personal. And sometimes, in this business, and that's the way it is, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's the coordinator, whatever, that's part of the gig. Also, we've got to step up around it and make sure that we're getting some things accomplished in some other spots. Put the ire towards me. I mean, I'm the one responsible for it, and I'm planning on getting it fixed.
So that's McElwain saying, hey, blame me, don't blame Doug Nussmeier. I think a lot of Florida fans are willing to take him up on that offer a little bit, although they're probably going to blame Nussmeier a little bit as well. But when you have this kind of low-energy coaches' comments about, votes of confidence for an offensive coordinator after the first week of the season, the look coming from Gainesville is not a good look at the moment. Would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with that. And listen, Coach Mack, I know firsthand that he is an incredible play caller. He really is. He's the next level when it comes to offensive play calling. The problem is that until that offensive line starts improving, until some of the details are sorted out on that offense, it's not going to matter what plays you call. There's no play call for 3rd and 18. You don't dial that up. I mean, you have some prayers every now and then. You hope your quarterback can scramble out and throw one up to a jump ball and hopefully find a way to get a first down. But you're not on schedule when you're doing stuff like that. And they found themselves too off rhythm too many times in this football game. And I found a number before the show today. 13th time in 28 games under Jim McElwain that Florida was held under 20 points.
Unbelievable.
And that's not what you want. When you hired Jim McElwain, you thought that he would be able to turn this offense around, really produce a good starting quarterback. Just hasn't come to fruition yet down there in Gainesville.
Well, Barry Couch in the comment section says McElwain sounds like he's asleep when he's talking with the comment you just heard there. And I think one of the reasons why you hear so little energy from McElwain in that moment is because I think he's actually tired of talking about this subject. For him, he actually had a lot of bass in his voice during the offseason about how the Gators' offense was going to be back, going to be better. You had Mark Thompson tweeting before the season about the disrespect. They were going to beat the brakes off of Michigan. Yeah. This is a Florida team that thought it was going to be able to turn the page as far as the conversation this season, and they weren't going to have to answer these troubling questions about why the offense is not getting better. What you hear from McElwain in the comment you just heard is not a guy who's sleepy. It's a guy who's tired of having to say and talk about the same subject, a subject that he thought he had behind him.
Sleepy and tired are good words. I'm going to go with disappointed. I mean, he sounds like he just walked out of the film room after watching the film from this past weekend. And I know that he was really wanting to hang his hat on the offensive line this year. He really felt like that was going to be a strength. They just didn't perform to the level of expectation that I think Jim McElwain had. It wasn't for lack of effort. I mean, I thought Florida really exploded on the scene. I thought they played with a ton of energy. I thought they played with a ton of want to. I think the running backs ran hard. They wanted to have a good game. It's just the attention to details up front that I think that was really lacking in this football game. Something Jim McElwain's going to have to get in that offensive line room and start to sort out.
Mike Mahortis in the comment section says we miss Will Grier, the quarterback now at West Virginia. And I watched some of that Virginia Tech game on Sunday night. Grier does look like a much better quarterback up there in Morgantown, West Virginia, better than anything Florida currently has on its roster. Now, you can say he was suspended for a year, and maybe McElwain was right to move on from him after that, or maybe not tell him what he wanted to hear in terms of getting him to stay. Maybe that was the right choice. But as far as talent and being a player goes, Grier is infinitely better than anybody that Florida currently has in its roster as far as quarterbacks go.
Right, I agree with you. I think Will Grier has the opportunity there at West Virginia to really be a nationally respected quarterback. I'm not ready to put this loss square on Felipe Franks, though. I think he still has a bright future ahead as a Florida quarterback. I thought he did some nice things on time. I think he went 5 of 9, 75 yards. I'm not ready to pin this on him, though. I think this starts up front. I think that comes with getting off schedule, trying the run game, not being able to get it going, and then just being under too much pressure and duress in the second half. Malik Zaire and Felipe Franks both have to work on their ball security, but in terms of what they did with their arm, I don't think I was that disappointed in the outcome that they had in the backfield.
John Reaper Morris also says that, hey, McElwain, if he's going to be getting on somebody, ought to be getting on that Florida offensive line. Well, he did get on that offensive line with his post-game press conference statements, and I know that Martez Ivey, some of the Florida players were a little bothered by that, but you said you thought that was totally appropriate for McElwain. You thought that this Florida offensive line deserved to be called out for the way it did nothing really against the Wolverines.
I think they did, and it starts with Martez Ivey, really a guy you're leaning on to be the anchor of your offensive line this year, moving from left guard to left tackle. I had questions back in the spring when they made the move. I thought that the better offensive tackle really was Jawan Taylor, but you couldn't lean on either one of these guys. I think that every man up front on that Florida offensive line would admit to you they didn't play the way they wanted to. Not only that, during the play they didn't play, but I thought the finish was bad. I thought that really finishing your blocks, your quarterback scrambling around for his life in the backfield, and I thought there was too many offensive linemen watching the play develop and then watching their own guys get hit.
Let me get one more comment here from David, who kind of ties both of our opening topics together here on AT&T's SEC Country Live. He says that Tennessee offensively proved that it's in better shape right now than Florida is, and that's leading to a second straight win for the Vols over the Gators when they play a couple weeks here in the month of September. Based on week one, and I totally get that week one can be a false positive. It can lead to some unfortunate predictions that prove not to be true later on in the season. But would you agree with the Vols fan who says, hey, my team won in overtime against Georgia Tech. Florida got embarrassed against Michigan, not to mention the 10 suspensions. Tennessee is in a position right now to look like the better of these two teams when they're about to play here.
I definitely agree with that. I for sure would, because I feel like Tennessee really started to establish an identity. Obviously they wanted things to work out better, but I don't think you can put it on the offense that they struggled in the first half and that they were down by 2 touchdowns at certain points in this game. I think it was completely on their defense. Georgia Tech did what they wanted to with the clock in the first half and starting off in the second half. Once Tennessee's offense had the ability to get the ball and start to get in rhythm and make some plays, they had playmakers on the field. And for that reason, I think you have to feel a little bit better about the trajectory of where Tennessee's offense is heading compared to what Florida's is doing. I think that Florida is headed in a skid right now. They have to find some answers and find what they're good at.
Yeah, Nate Stone says that Tennessee was playing a terrible defense last night in Georgia Tech. When they play Florida in the Swamp, it's going to be a much different story. We'll see how that plays out. By the way, a little less than 5 minutes right now, we'll bring in Ben Wolk, who covers Auburn and Auburn recruiting for SECCountry.com. We'll talk to him about the Tigers' big trip up to Death Valley, or over to Death Valley on Saturday. This is AT&T's SEC Country Live. That is Mike Johnson. My name is Brandon Adams. We're glad to have you with us, and glad to have AT&T as well, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. Before we talk some Auburn with Ben Wolk, let's talk about the Georgia Bulldogs here for a moment. Item number 3 on our AT&T SEC Country Live First and 10. So Georgia also has a big game on Saturday. It travels north of the Mason-Dixon line for the first time in about half a century, getting ready to go play Notre Dame. But you know the story here. We talked about it yesterday. Georgia will do so without its presumed starting quarterback from the beginning of the season. Jacob Eason, sprained knee. He won't play. In his place, Jake Fromm, a very popular freshman with Georgia fans, but a guy that is still just a freshman. Is this young man ready for this big stage on Saturday? Well, Kirby Smart says he certainly brings a lot of intangible qualities to the table. Here's how he described his quarterback Fromm when he spoke to the media on Monday.
Jake is he's a gamer. I mean, he's just a kid that grew up around the game. I mean, I look at him and compare him to what would be a coach's son, a football junkie. He likes it. He loves being around it. He's always cheering and fired up out there. I mean, every time he makes a good throw or a good play in practice, he's jacked up, and he's as excited for the kid who made the play as he is himself. I mean, it's a defensive coach at times. You watch him do it, and you see him cheering, and you think like he's rubbing it in. That's just who he is, and he really is passionate about the game, and he can't let his emotions get in the way for him, because for him it's just an excitement. He's just been that kind of way. He's real competitive.
So you heard about every football cliche you can get. He's a gamer. He's a coach on the field.
He's a film junkie.
Yeah. You heard all of that description from Kirby and talking about Jake Fromm. Now, someone who's at least pays close attention to the Georgia program, it seems like some of this may be more than cliches. A lot of this may actually be true about Jake Fromm, but he is still just a freshman, no matter how much his legend may have grown here over the last couple of days. Can Georgia go and win at Notre Dame with a freshman quarterback?
I think they can. Obviously Jake Fromm played a little bit last weekend, and I don't think the situation was too big for him last weekend. I think that he showed up obviously against probably an inferior opponent. You're going to see a lot more talent and speed on Notre Dame's defense than you did against App State last week. But I think Georgia is better suited for this situation than probably any other SEC team. When you look at their situation with Jake Fromm, who is known as being a film junkie, and all the cliches you want to, they're all cliches until he gets on the football field. And I think you really saw it start to play out that nobody panicked on the Georgia sideline. Everybody looked at Jake Fromm, looked in his eyes, and knew that he was ready for that moment. I mentioned it yesterday. I thought he looked on time. I thought his ball looked crisp. I thought he was not in shock. He knew where to go with the football, knew how to disperse it. And now he gets an entire week to prepare. I think it was important that Kirby Smart didn't say Jacob Eason's a game-time decision. Yeah. Go ahead and give Jake Fromm the start. Let him prepare all week as a starter like you want him to be there. And let him understand that this is his opportunity to go out and show what he's about. I think that Georgia was very well suited for this type of situation.
So here's the thing that I think you got to bring up, though, and I think the point you're making is a good one, but not only does Jake Fromm get a week to prepare now for Notre Dame also gets a week to prepare for him. And listen, the Irish were terrible on defense last season. There's reason to think that maybe gets better here in 2017, but they are certainly going to try to confuse Fromm more. And this is a Notre Dame defense that's probably better at stopping the run than it is at stopping the pass. Therefore, they may just try to key on the run here, take Chubb and Michelle out of the game, the two really good Georgia running backs, and that puts more of the pressure in this game on Jake Fromm. I think that Fromm may be a special young man. He may be uniquely equipped to handle that pressure, but you have to point out how enormous this is on his back right now.
It's a huge task for him, but my argument to that would be I think Notre Dame would have approached it the same way if Jacob Eason was playing in the football game. Obviously, Jacob Eason has the snaps from last year. He has a bunch of starts under his belt. But the question has always remained, how much does he love football and how much film is he watching?
Yeah.
I think Notre Dame would have attacked it the same way. They would have tried to confuse Jacob Eason on some of their looks. You haven't seen Jacob Eason, for all the good things he did last year, really pick apart a defense. And I think Notre Dame would have approached it the same way. Stop the run game, stop Michelle and Chubb in the backfield, and you'll be able to get to the quarterback at certain times. I don't think Fromm being in the game changes that in any way for Notre Dame, the way they approach this. I think they're going to try to create havoc in the defensive backfield and blitz and blitz and more blitz.
If you're a Georgia fan, we'd love to hear from you in the comment section here today on AT&T's SEC Country Live. Your thoughts about Fromm playing on Saturday against Notre Dame and the chance that gives the Dogs to go on the road here and get a big non-conference win. That's Mike Johnson. My name is Brandon Adams. This is AT&T's SEC Country Live. AT&T, a proud sponsor of SEC Country Live. AT&T, entertainment your way. We'll talk more Georgia later on. We'll get some Alabama talk here in just a moment. Kind of an interesting look at Alabama coach Nick Saban. Before that, though, let's check in Auburn, Alabama, as the Auburn Tigers travel to Clemson on Saturday for a huge non-conference game, a part of a really dazzling Week 2 in the SEC. Let's talk to Benjamin Wolk here, who covers Auburn and Auburn recruiting for SECCountry.com. And I guess, Ben, if you don't mind, let me start with this. You know, a lot of anticipation about the debut of Auburn quarterback Jared Stidham on Saturday. Maybe a little rusty. The numbers overall probably not great. Maybe some reason for at least debate about what Stidham was able to get done against Georgia Southern. What did you make of Stidham's performance?
He looked like a guy who hadn't played college football for 2 years. I think he looked a lot like what I sort of expected. They actually threw the ball a little bit more than I thought they were going to in that opener. Obviously, with Kerryon Johnson getting injured, I think that sort of forced them to do that a little bit more. But, you know, again, like you said, not the best passing statistics, showed some serious signs of rust, but at the end of the day, he was able to move the ball, able to put up 41 points, albeit against Georgia Southern. The real test obviously comes on Saturday.
All right, Ben, I hate to say this, but we've actually got a little competition here. Mike Johnson, he's tired of you being, the handsome, debonair, long flowing locks. Mike Johnson, who's never had that opportunity in his life, wanted to kind of bring out his own version here. And I got to tell you, Mike, you're not bad looking in that regard.
I wasn't going to say anything. I was going to see if he noticed it. But, he's been showing off his locks for the last couple of weeks, and I thought I had to let mine dangle too.
Ben, I think what happened here is last week, I think you brought down the whatever you call it that holds the hair in place. I think you brought that down. When that sort of dropped and draped around, you could hear the swooning on the part of the females in our audience over, and I think Mike is just flat out jealous of that.
I'm jealous of the man bun, man. I really am.
Well, you look great. I mean, I don't know if I have any more use for this show anymore now that you've got that, but man, that looks good.
That was your little corner to stand on. By the way, and now you won't get this reference, but you look a little bit like Michael P.S. Hayes with like the dark, it's a professional wrestler from the 80s, the dark beard, the blonde hair. Nobody in the room even knows who I'm talking about. And nobody watching probably does either, but a little Michael Hayes, Freebird style from Mike Johnson.
This thing's hot.
Anyway, Ben, back to football here for a moment. So, if that's the story with Auburn on the offensive side of the ball, maybe a little underwhelming against the Georgia Southern team you'd like to kind of, rack up some points and some stats against. How about that defense for Kevin Steele? Seems like that was another one of these week one performances in 2017 that really seemed to validate the good year the Tigers had in 2016.
That defensive line, I mean, we talked all offseason. What's that defensive line going to look like despite losing Montrevious Adams and Carl Lawson? And people hinted they felt it could be even better in 2017, and obviously it's just Georgia Southern. You don't want to get ahead of yourself too much. But they gave up 78 yards. Their defensive line was all over the place. They can give so many different looks. I mean, they've got so many versatile guys on the defensive line. I mean, Marlon Davidson, Derek Brown, Nick Coe were all guys who lined up both inside and outside on the defensive line. I'm interested to see what it looks like. The secondary is thin, so when you get a team like Clemson or going forward that can really throw the ball down the field, what's that going to look like? But, I mean, against the run, a team like Georgia Southern that was running the ball all game long, it's not going to be an easy thing to do against Auburn this season, regardless of who you are. I mean, that defensive line is something special.
Let me just take a quick moment before we get back to football here to say thank you to so many people in the comment section, including Bob Spradlin, who remembers the 80s wrestling trio, the Fabulous Freebirds and Michael P.S.A.'s. Thank you for not leaving me hanging on that reference. I got a whole room of people looking at me as if I'm speaking Portuguese in here right now because I'm making 80s wrestling references. So Bob and others who brought that up, thank you so much for that. And Ben, we also kind of look ahead here to a big one on Saturday for Auburn going into Clemson. And, there's been some kind of interesting movement with the point spread here. We're going to talk more about that later on the show. Auburn actually opens the week as a pretty big underdog. The line has kind of moved in the direction of Auburn here a little bit lately. To me, if you're going to try to make Auburn a big underdog and give them little chance to win the game on the road against Clemson, I think you're underrating Auburn. I think you're overrating Clemson. This, to me, is not the same Clemson team it was a season ago. Obviously, no Deshaun Watson makes that true. And I believe this is a much better brand of Auburn. And by the way, Auburn gave Clemson everything it wanted in Jordan Hare a season ago. How do you handicap this game right now?
I agree. It started out, I think if I'm not mistaken, it started out as about a 7-point line with Clemson as a 7-point favorite. I think it's trended back a little bit. I think that it'll be about a field goal game either way. I think that Auburn suffered some injuries. Kerryon Johnson getting injured against Georgia Southern. He had 16 carries in the first 15 minutes of the game. Obviously got a little overworked, I think. I think it was a hamstring injury. I would be surprised if he's ready to play for Clemson, so I think that you're going to see a heavy dose of Cameron Petway, see if Auburn's other running backs can sort of get in the mix there a little bit as well. I still like Clemson in this one, but only by about a field goal. The home field advantage, it's not easy to go to Death Valley, and obviously no Deshaun Watson, but Clemson looked pretty good. They've got some studs all over the place. I think it really will come down to that quarterback position, but for right now, I do still like Clemson by about a field goal.
I think what the phrase you're looking for is closer than the experts think, I believe. Hey, Benjamin, thanks so much for your time here on AT&T's SEC Country Live. Always good stuff. We appreciate your analysis. We'll look forward to reading more of your recruiting coverage there at SECcountry.com and talk to you again here on our program very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, Ben gave you a little gambling tip there. He says he likes Auburn, or he likes Clemson to win the game, but only by 3 points. Right now, you can cash that ticket if he ends up being right about that.
I'm telling you right now, I'm sure there was a ton of people heartbroken last year when that game was kind of tight and Clemson's able to come away with 6 points. Between the Texas A&M game on Sunday and Georgia Tech hitting the over last night, I've had a couple bad beats in the last days. I might hang up my gambling cleats this weekend.
That may be a good idea. By the way, Bobby Mullinex, Brian Russell, thank you for your wrestling references. Y'all know I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, so I appreciate that. One more thing, Cliff Nelson also talking about LSU in the comment section. He seems to think that this LSU team right now on both sides of the ball after week one more impressive than Auburn. I think you had LSU ranked ahead of Auburn anyway to start the season. Yeah. Does the shutout of BYU, Auburn's offensive struggles against, or at least the passing game struggles against Georgia Southern, does that validate LSU ahead of Auburn for the moment?
I think it does a little bit just because I already had them there and I'm not going to move them due to what I saw against BYU the other day because I think they play a well-rounded football game. Anytime you can shut out an offense like that, you're going to look good. And I was really excited about what you saw from Matt Canada. We mentioned it yesterday. Some of the pre-snap motions, some of the different looks we haven't seen out of an LSU offense in quite some time is what Matt Canada brought to the table. He started the game off by motioning every player on Saturday night. I think that's the taste of what's to come. I get excited. They have on that side of the ball and being able to get under that. Guys just important by the offense.
All right, item number 4, AT&T's SEC Country Live. Nick Saban, not keeping with tradition. Nick Saban bucking a reason. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. We'll decide the right choice or not. When you win the Chick-fil-A kickoff game as of late, coaches have traditionally taken the leather helmet. That's the trophy for winning the game. As a sort of place it on there. I'll show you an example. You got Kirby Smart, who put the helmet on. He's going to give you a little bit of a Heisman, their helmet on. Well, Nick Saban, maybe because he sees how dorky Butch Jones and others look, last night, Saturday night, Saban doesn't want to do this. You see the leather helmet coming his way. It's about to be passed around, and Saban does not. Talk about Heisman pose. He gives you the Heisman stiff arm. Jalen Hurts tries to protect him there, trying to protect that hair, and Saban does not put on the leather helmet. Is that a smart move by Saban or not?
I think we just see this 2 different ways. First of all, I don't know what y'all want from this guy.
I'm asking you.
He's smiling. He's smiling up there. He's happy and he decided they won the game. I thought he reached up to pull it down. I think he reached up. He was going to grab those earpieces. He was going to pull it down and get that.
We're going to have to look at this again. There's no way.
Everybody else has been telling me he was like, take it off. I think he was reaching to pull it on.
You are assuming I have some sort of nefarious motive here. But I asked you a question. Was Saban wrong for not wearing the leather helmet? You can answer however you want. Don't assume that my question has some sort of predetermined answer here.
I don't think
he does not want that thing.
I don't think he likes looking like a goofball. No, I don't think he would want to look like a goofball. No, do I think he would have looked like that? Saban can do Saban. He can wear whatever he wants to. I think he'll be good to go in my book. Anyways.
Shows how little you know. Because in this particular case, I'm actually going to defend Saban.
There you go.
I do think you look like a little bit of a goofball when you put that thing on. And you know what? It's one thing the day after the game because everybody knows the context it's in. But, Kirby Smart with that leather helmet on, Butch Jones with that leather helmet on, these pictures are going to last a long time after everybody's forgotten why they had this thing on. It becomes part of their sort of blooper reel type stuff. So I think Saban's actually kind of smart for kind of sidestepping the leather helmet. I'm not bashing Saban on this. I'm on his side. You jumped the gun.
Listen, I'm proud of you, man. And somewhere a snowball just made it through. I agree with you. I really do. Those pictures are going to live on. I wouldn't have had a problem if he had put it on. I wouldn't have had a problem if he'd have said no. I'm just saying from what I saw in the film, it looked to me like he didn't say no at any point. I think he was just like, yeah, give me the helmet.
But I think Saban's also had the experience lately where he got caught on camera. He was doing that little dance thing. He's had some things kind of go against him a little bit lately. I think he knows that. Listen, Saban is very comfortable doing that same sort of stiff Argyle sweater pose with recruits, where it's like he looks like he's in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. He's got the most antiseptic looking house I've ever seen. That's the he looks like American Gothic or something like that. That's the pose that Saban's most comfortable with.
Yeah, and if you watch on the film too, look away from the helmet for just a second and watch his smile. It's like one of those smiles that doesn't budge. It's kind of like this. Yeah. And he's just looking around like, okay, can I quit smiling now? Okay, cool. Listen with this. I'm trying to get back on the bus.
Jesse Keith Watt says Saban didn't mind helmet. He was having fun of their celebration with his team. That may be true. He also knows.
This is cool, but we only won one game.
Exactly.
We don't need a trophy.
That's a good point. This is not Tennessee giving championship rings for winning the Battle of Bristol. Yeah. This is one game, and Saban and Alabama win this game essentially every year.
Yeah, Nick's like, why is there a stage out here? Get this thing out of here. I'm trying to go home.
Yeah, that's actually probably a really good point. All right, item number 5 here on our AT&T SEC Country Live, 1st and 10. So one of the big performances on Saturday for the SEC actually came from a somewhat unlikely source. South Carolina, who I think a lot of people have included among their sleeper teams. but maybe weren't expecting a week 1 win against North Carolina State, a Wolfpack team that's thought to be pretty good, really good on defense, especially the defensive line. But I thought that South Carolina was as impressive as any SEC team in how they went out and got the win against North Carolina State. I want to get your thoughts about that game, but I also want to go into the South Carolina locker room here for a video published by South Carolina of some really inspiring words from both Will Muschamp and his a quarterback here, really excited about the win with justifiable reasons that they got against the Wolfpack. Take a look at this.
As we get in there, we got to improve and get better because we go on the road for the SEC next week. Take the next step is what we do. I tell you what, I'm damn proud to be your head football coach. You fought your guts out there, and I appreciate it. Hey, offense, we picked the defense up first half. Defense, y'all busted y'all ass in the second half. Pick this up. That's what the team's about.
For me, I find that video incredibly believable, especially the part from Jake Bentley there at the end. Will Muschamp, leading into that. Muschamp looks more like a head coach to me now than he did when he was at Florida. I think they ought to be proud and excited after that game. In the locker room, that gives you a sense of it. Did feel like their moment. Gamecocks fans, no pun intended,
I feel like Will Muschamp had that hard eye emoji sitting there. That's really taking this football team. It's an exciting football. And if you look at the stats, really break them down, there was no reason South Carolina should have won the game. I mean, they were out in 5-4, 2-46, and State had 29 first downs. When you look at the handle things, special teams, the game quarterback for South Carolina, I think you have to be excited about where the future goes. Obviously, they didn't get it done as much as you wanted to. Offense, the running has to be better. Just something about all the